The room was dim. Only the quiet hum of my son's oxygen machine filled the silence. He was 8 years old, frail, his little chest rising and falling under the steady help of that machine. Every night I checked the tubing twice, kissed his forehead, and whispered that he was stronger than anyone gave him credit for. To me, he was everything. To my family, he was nothing more than a burden. That's the word they loved to spit at me, like I'd done something wrong by keeping him alive. That night, while I was folding laundry in the corner of the room, the hum stopped. Just like that. Gone. My heart dropped. My boy's lips trembled, his tiny hands twitched, and panic shot through me. I sprinted to the machine, checking the connections. Nothing. Then I looked up, and through the window I saw it. Our house lights had gone dark, the whole place, but not by accident. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video? Because in the hallway, laughing loud enough for me to hear, was my sister Amber. She was holding the main power switch like it was some kind of toy. She giggled. "Oops, looks like your weak little boy won't make it through the night without his precious machine." I screamed at her, my voice breaking as I begged her to turn it back on, but she just smirked and crossed her arms. Seconds dragged like hours as my son's breaths became shallow. I rushed to grab the portable backup tank, my hands shaking so hard I almost dropped it. I managed to hook it up just in time, tears streaming down my face, my shirt soaked with sweat. My boy's chest rose again, weak but steady. Relief flooded me, but behind me I heard clapping, slow, mocking. It was my dad. "Pathetic," he said, his voice sharp as a knife. "You treat him like he's worth saving. He's just like you, weak. If he can't survive without a machine, maybe he shouldn't survive at all." "And my mom?" She leaned against the wall, smirking. "Let's see how long he lasts, huh? You should be grateful your sister even bothered to touch that switch. At least she showed you what reality looks like." They laughed. Actually laughed while my child gasped for air on a backup tank I bought with money from working 3 shifts at the diner. I wanted to scream, to tear into them, but all I could do was hold my son's hand. His tiny fingers gripped mine, reminding me who I had to stay strong for. In that moment, something inside me hardened. My family wasn't my family anymore. They were wolves circling me, waiting for me to fall. And I decided I wouldn't fall. Later that night, when the lights finally came back, my sister strolled into the room, twirling the switch key around her finger like a trophy. "You should have seen your face," she laughed, crying over that useless kid. At least my TikTok got some views out of it. People love raw reactions. I didn't reply. I just stared at her. Because deep down, I knew this moment would stay with me. I knew that one day, the same people who laughed at my child fighting for his life would be the ones begging, and when that day came, I wouldn't forget the sound of their laughter. The next morning, my son's face was pale, but he smiled at me anyway, whispering, "I'm okay, Mommy." His voice was faint, but it was strong enough to keep me from falling apart. I kissed his forehead, promised him we'd never go through a night like that again. But promises are fragile in a house where cruelty is the rule, not the exception. When I went to the kitchen to heat water for tea, I found my sister Amber sitting at the table with her phone propped up. The sound of last night's chaos blared from her screen. She had recorded the whole thing, me crying, fumbling with the backup tank, my son's wheezing breaths in the background. She was editing it, adding captions like, "When weakness runs in the family," and laughing so hard, she snorted. I lunged for her phone, but my dad stepped in front of me, his arm stiff like a barricade. "Touch her phone and you're out of this house," he warned, eyes narrowed. "Don't think we won't do it. You think you and your broken kid matter? We're the only ones keeping a roof over your heads." My mom chimed in from the sink, washing dishes with a grin plastered on her face. "Besides, it's true. He is weak. You baby him too much. That's why you'll never get anywhere in life. You're chained to someone who should have never been born." The words sliced through me. I froze, gripping the counter so hard my knuckles turned white. For a second, I thought about screaming, about throwing every plate in the cupboard at them. But then I looked back down the hall at the room where my son was coloring with crayons, humming to himself, trying to forget the terror of the night before. That's when I realized I couldn't explode in that moment. I had to wait and plan. Days turned into weeks. My parents and Amber kept taunting me, never letting me forget what happened. They made jokes at dinner about cutting the power again, just to see if my son could toughen up. Amber bragged about her followers on TikTok, how her dark humor content was blowing up. She never mentioned what she filmed, but I knew. It was only a matter of time before she posted something that crossed a line even she couldn't hide. One evening, when I came back from work, exhausted after pulling a double shift, I found Amber dancing in the living room with my son's oxygen mask strapped to her face like a costume. The machine wasn't even plugged in, but she had the tubes dangling for effect. My mom was clapping along to the music. My dad was recording. They were proud of her. That was the moment something in me snapped. Not rage, not tears. Just a cold, sharp clarity. They didn't see my son as a human being. They saw him as a prop, a joke, something to step on so my sister could shine brighter. I decided then that I would never let them have that power over us again. I quietly started planning. I took on extra hours at the diner, saving every tip in a jar I hid inside an old cereal box. I reached out to my friend from high school, Jenna, who worked in tech. I asked her if she could teach me how to trace where videos came from, how to monitor accounts, how to track down digital footprints. She laughed at first, but when I told her why, she went pale and said, "I'll help." Meanwhile, my parents got bolder. One night when my son's tank beeped, signaling it needed a refill, I begged my dad to drive me to the pharmacy. He leaned back in his recliner and said, "Maybe let him go without. You'll save some money. Nature will do what it wants anyway." My mom laughed so hard she had to wipe tears. "Imagine telling people your son was so useless he couldn't even breathe on his own," she added, shaking her head. I carried my boy in my arms, walked down the block, and took the bus myself to get the refill. The whole way there, my son's head rested on my shoulder, and he whispered, "Don't cry, Mommy. We'll be okay." He was comforting me while barely breathing himself. That night, as I rocked him back to sleep, I swore that no matter what it took, one day I'd make sure they felt the same helplessness they forced on me. Amber didn't stop. She started taking photos of my son without my permission, his frail body, his tired eyes, and turning them into memes for her group chat. Once, I overheard her saying, "When he finally croaks, at least it'll give me some final content." My stomach twisted, bile rose in my throat, but I kept my face calm. Because now, I was closer to being ready. I had already gathered enough screenshots, videos, and audio clips to prove everything. Not to the world. No, exposing them online would be too easy, too fast. I wanted them to watch their own empire of pride, their fake image of being the perfect family, collapse from the inside. I started to align my steps carefully, making sure every move would tie back to them when the time came, and the time came sooner than I expected. One night, Amber hosted a live stream in the living room. She was bragging to her growing audience, showing off her new clothes, new makeup, all bought with my parents' money. But halfway through, she made a joke about my son's oxygen tank. She dragged it into frame, saying, "Here's my little brother's babysitter. Want to see what happens if I unplug it?" I was standing in the hallway. My stomach churned, but I didn't stop her. Because I knew the camera was rolling, and this time it wasn't her private account. She had linked it to her brand new monetized page. Every second of her cruelty was streaming live, with my parents laughing in the background. I walked away, silent, into my room. Because I knew, finally, that this was the crack I had been waiting for. And soon, they would beg. Amber's live stream spread like wildfire. Not because she was funny, not because her dances were good, but because people watching saw what I had lived with my whole life. Her sneering face as she yanked the oxygen tube. My dad's booming laugh echoing, "Pull harder, maybe he'll grow lungs." My mom clapping and saying, "At least he's good for something, content." Within hours, the clip wasn't hers anymore. Strangers ripped it, reposted it, dissected it. She tried deleting the stream, but the damage was done. Amber didn't realize her followers weren't laughing with her. They were horrified. Comments poured in, calling her a monster, asking where the boy's mother was, tagging news outlets, doctors, and even child protection agencies. The next morning, I woke to pounding fists on the front door. It wasn't my parents. It was reporters, neighbors, even one of my son's school teachers. They had seen everything. They demanded answers. I stood there clutching my son's hand, and for once, I didn't shield my parents. I opened the door wider and let the world see exactly who was sitting smugly in the living room, my mom in her bathrobe sipping coffee, and my dad watching TV, Amber still scrolling her phone. "Ask them," I said simply. "They'll tell you what they think of their grandson." Chaos erupted. My parents weren't ready to be cornered like that. They tried laughing it off, saying it was all a joke. But people weren't buying it. My neighbors screamed at them. My son's teacher cried, "He's a child! What is wrong with you?" And for the first time, I saw cracks in their arrogance. But that wasn't enough for me. Not yet. The agencies stepped in faster than I thought possible. Within a week, Child Protective Services were investigating. Doctors arrived to examine my son, shocked at how malnourished he was because my parents often forgot to save food for us. Inspectors came and discovered that half the money my parents bragged about having came from siphoning funds meant for my son's health care, money I had scraped and begged for through assistance programs. Amber's accounts were reviewed too, and the trail of cruelty she had posted online painted her into a corner she couldn't escape. I never said a word. I just handed over what I had quietly collected, screenshots, receipts, audio clips. It was like tossing gasoline onto a fire. The downfall was brutal. My dad lost his job when his employer saw the footage. My mom's ladies' circle threw her out, whispering about the grandson she let almost die. Amber's accounts were banned, sponsors pulled out, and kids at her college campus plastered her face on flyers that read, "This girl abuses sick children for views." That's when the begging started. One night I heard knocking on my door. My dad's voice was hoarse, almost unrecognizable. "Please, let us explain. We didn't mean it. It got out of hand." My mom's voice followed, trembling for the first time in my life. "We're sorry. We were wrong. We didn't think it would cost us everything. Please, help us." I opened the door just enough for them to see my son sitting at the kitchen table, coloring with a little oxygen mask strapped to his face. He looked up, confused, and whispered, "Grandma? Grandpa?" I knelt beside him, stroked his hair, and whispered loud enough for them to hear, "Sweetheart, some people don't deserve a second chance. They made their choice." My parents broke down, begging harder. My dad's fists, once so heavy with anger, now pounded weakly on the door frame. My mom was sobbing into her hands, mascara running down her face. Amber stood behind them, pale as a ghost, muttering, "Please, just tell them it's fake. Tell them you lied." But I didn't lie. I didn't twist anything. I had simply let the truth out into the light. I looked them in the eyes, cold and steady, and said, "You laughed while my son almost died. Now laugh while you lose everything." And then, slowly, I closed the door. Inside, my son tugged at my sleeve. "Are they gone, Mommy?" I smiled at him, a real smile this time. "Yes, baby, they're gone, and they're never coming back." That night, I tucked him into bed, his oxygen machine humming softly beside him. For the first time in years, I felt something stronger than rage. Peace. Because I hadn't needed to scream or fight. I just let them choke on their own cruelty until it destroyed them. And outside, in the dark, my parents and Amber stood in the cold, their empire of pride shattered, their begging unheard. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments, from where are you watching this video?